What's good, folks? Welcome to a special Super Wildcard post-game edition of this show, a show where we're just talking about it offline, trying to figure out the right verbiage, whether we're coming up from the game, coming down, just,
Yeah.
man, the Bills, I'm going to say escape Super Wildcard weekend with a 34-31 victory over the Miami Dolphins, a game that it looked like it was turning out to be what we thought it would be early, or what some people thought it would be. And man, just what a literally like wild card, like that
Yeah.
label just seemed to really, as Caleb says, I aged 20 years watching this. Yeah,
That's a
just
long one.
it was from the length of the game. Yeah, the game was like 5 hours long. It was intense. It was just you're on the edge of your seat, and then you're frustrated, and then you're happy, and then you're sad, and then you're worried. Just I think everyone hit the range of emotions. And after every Bills game, you get the post game with Greg and Aaron. And Eric, you had the idea today of, doing another post game to take a look at some other aspects of this game, especially with it being the playoffs, but also just the importance of these games, what's underlying everything schematically and by design and all those pieces. And that's going to be the focus of this show, again, on Super Wildcard weekend, as we ourselves are starting to try and come down or come up from the end of this game.
Yeah, no, I was, as everyone's saying in the chat, it was a doozy. It was a long one. It was a roller coaster ride. It was a lot closer than I'm sure a lot of fans expected. And a lot of the degenerates at Cover One, obviously, betting on the game and everything. But yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster ride. But in the end, as one of the comments said, just win. And, they did come out with a big win against a divisional opponent. It's not easy, guys. 3 games against the same opponent, especially that the second game that they played was only a few weeks ago. So a lot of familiarity, and that scheme, Boyer's scheme of Miami, coming from that New England Patriots coaching tree, has always given Josh Allen fits. And I think that the Dolphins in many ways run a better version of it, and a version that really kind of exploits some of the weaknesses of Josh when we're talking ball security and pressure and dealing with pressure. So I was not surprised that there were some of those turnovers, but in the end, it doesn't matter. They got the dub.
Yeah, Kevin, what are your thoughts on, quick reaction coming away from this game again now? Rough. I'm seeing the time, and I'm like 7:06. I'm like, oh, we're about 3 hours from game time. It's like, no, we're barely like 2 hours from the end of this game. As you sit here, yeah, wild. As you sit here, as we start to dive in, where does your head lie? Where does your heart lie? What are you're sitting here, you're looking back on this game. What's the first thought that comes to your mind?
I think just how hard it is to win football games in general, but specifically in the playoffs. Like we just talked about Boyer, he's a super vet of New England. He's been in the cornerbacks coach for a long time, pass game assistant. He's done a lot there. And it does show that he's very well in tune with how to potentially stop top tier quarterbacks. And that is where this thing starts. Yeah. Like, I think you can start with, they score a lot of points, right? 31 points. You look at that box score and you would say, wow. And I've already seen some national media narratives about how we're going to stop the Bengals or whatever, Jacksonville or Kansas City in a few weeks, potentially. So for me, I think the most interesting thing to come from this was how good their defense and opportunistic their defense was while still allowing 34 points. But at the same time, they're the complete reason they are in this football game. And I think that led for a really interesting day between the Bills having some offensive success, them having some defensive success. The next thing you know, they're technically driving after the big play to Waddle with a chance to win the game. So it was not great. I didn't prefer a game like this, but I don't think you can ever dog in the NFL play. Sure, this isn't week 3 in the NFL playoffs. I don't think you can ever dog somebody for winning. We've seen this game go the other way in 13 seconds, and Music City Miracle or other games. We've seen this go that way, and even in the regular season too. So they won. They were the better team today, and I don't really care who was playing quarterback. I mean, Thompson played pretty well at times, and his receivers let him down too. So honestly, I was pretty rational about this one. Usually I'm a little bit more irrational come games, especially regular season. But when it's playoffs, I'm actually more rational because it's like, look, they won. I don't care about stats right now.
Yeah, that's fair. And we're going to dive into, Eric, I know you got the stats queued up and kick it to you to dive into some pieces, but we're going to be going over things offensively, things defensively, schematically. Real quick, I just don't want to lose it. I want to grab this comment from Mike. saying, can you guys really condone the soft 4-man rush, never blitz, prevent defense the Bills insist on playing? Eric, your expression says it. I thought that was the opposite in this game. The
Yeah.
Bills brought a lot of 5-man pressures, and even just from the traditional 4-man pressure sense, a lot of simulateds, a lot of creepers. I thought the Bills did a good job in this game, especially as the game went on, attacking Skylar Thompson and this Miami front. I thought they started to shy away from their traditional 4-man rush zone type of package and really tried to do what they could to heat up Skylar Thompson and make him uncomfortable in this game.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that real quick. Yes, creeper simulated pressures where they're up at the line of scrimmage, showing guys and then dropping them out. They did that more kind of in the back half, but there were a lot of 5- and 6-man pressures, some add-on pressures where, hey, the running back staying in the block, Milano who's rushing, hey, Edmonds is going to fire downhill. Like when we go back and look at some of these, the snaps of Edmonds and Milano, you're going to see they rush the passer, I would say in the double digits. It might be up in the double digits, definitely combined, but I think Edmonds, I mean, what a game he had. We'll talk about him later, but I do think this may, from top to bottom, this may have been the most variety of rushes, of pass rushes and blitzes that I've seen from Leslie Frazier in some time. We're not just talking zone blitzes. We're not just talking man blitzes. Like we had all different types of pressures. And I thought that sometimes it got home. Sometimes they were just playing the sticks and trying to keep everything in front of them. But overall, the variety of pressures that Leslie Frazier brought kind of impressed me, to be honest.
I was thinking the same thing, and this is a piece again we're going to talk to when we get into the defensive side of it. Like that was something they needed today. Like in an ideal world, the Bills can just rush 4 and drop 7 into coverage and go from there. But that piece was inconsistent today. And when they were able to generate pressure, it was with, the simulateds and with the creepers and confusing offensive linemen or bringing 5- and 6-man pressures and beating a running back block or beating the tight end block. And I thought, that design and turning up that dial, and especially for a quarterback like Skylar Thompson, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but when facing 5 or more rushers, his yards per attempt is like 1.5, and his rating is like 37th out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks. And the Bills leaned into that piece today, and it made sense. So, but see, Mike, you can't say never mind simulated blitz. I mean, real blitz like that. Okay, fair enough. To each their own.
You'll see when we bring the film out later in the week, you'll see how those were actually, they worked a lot, because you're trying to process pre to post snap with a defensive end dropping out and Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, coming right down Broadway at the quarterback, and he doesn't see how the defense is spinning. Okay. So I get it. I know you wanted to blitz more, but I'm telling you, when the stats come out on how often the Bills blitzed, actually sent 5 or more, you're going to see a lot more than what you probably thought, emotionally during the game. I was
going to say too, like just from like a percentage perspective, if we're just counting, 5 or more rushers, I don't even think it's like venturing a guess or trying to take a risk saying that their average today and usage rate was much higher or higher in general than what they are.
And Kevin, talk about this, man. Talk about sending a real blitz. You're leaving guys like Tyreek and Waddle, who even when they were dropping 7, they were still getting behind some of these defensive backs, right?
They sure were, and if it wasn't for a couple great defensive plays by Trey White early in this game, trailing on trail position, trail coverage, and then you had a really, great Elam game, like really on Hill's side, locking him up, made a couple great plays of the game, really, pass breakups, the interception, obviously, and he looked like a natural in some of these coverages. So that was really awesome to see after the Dane injury. I'm not sure if we got word on how severe that is yet on that knee. But it was good to see. And you have to be really careful with these 2 receivers, even with Skylar Thompson, who was almost going to make you pay in those. So it was great to see. Like for me, you look at even just standard statistics. Milano has 2 sacks. You're sending your linebackers. Just straight up, if you just take a look at the box score, would tell you that they did come after him a little bit with Milano being in there all day. So it is scary to leave receivers like that. And the Bills are going to face another set of really good receivers, maybe if Cincinnati wins. So this doesn't get any easier. But I really am glad that it's all a really competitive game. I don't know what you gain from winning 40, and that's fun for us as fans and commentators and podcasters who win 40-0. We can chill and have fun in the fourth quarter, but the team earned some valuable game experience, 1-score games. How much have we all heard about that? So they locked it up when it mattered, and the defense played pretty good. I'd be the first to comment if I didn't personally like something with the DBs, but I thought they played pretty good today all around. Like I really didn't have too many issues.
And Eric, you've got some fun stats that are queued up, and one of the columns that I know caught your eye, the PD column there, the passes defended 10 total for the Buffalo Bills, 4 from Tremaine Edmonds, 1 from Marlowe, 2 from Elam, 2 huge ones from Elam. We saw plays from Taron Johnson on the ball, including a perfect deep one where he punched through the hands on Jalen Waddle, something that the Bills have struggled with as a secondary this year. Was Dane Jackson was getting, vilified for it a lot, but it was happening to Taron Johnson. It was happening to Trey White at times. It happened to Elam a couple of times, like the inability to make plays on the ball. But we saw the opposite today. The Bills secondary and the linebackers as well, making plays on the ball. And they not only were they doing it in terms of volume, but they were also happening at key moments that potentially changed the tide of the game.
Yeah, and you're talking about plays down the field versus speedy wide receivers with their backs to the ball and the quarterback. So they're having to read the man. And some of those are just textbook, like Taron Johnson's over the middle, perfectly passed ball over that second level, and you just see him punch it out. Like there were so many textbook plays on the ball with guys' backs to the quarterback down the field. And they didn't panic. Prior games over the course of this season, you saw guys panic, and this one it was just a lot different. They were just calm, and as I said, they were getting behind them at times, especially in some like cover 3 looks, but to make plays and hold that mental toughness and exhibit that down the field versus some of the talent that the Dolphins have on offense was really impressive. 10 pass deflections. That's nuts. That is nuts. That's just great stuff from, and going back and tracking the levels of where those pass deflections happen is going to be fun to watch. Cause again, there were just plays that that in the past, the defensive backs and the linebackers have been criticized for.
Yeah. And it was needed today with, like Kevin alluded to, I know what the final score line looks like with the 31 points, but the Bills defense was put in some disadvantageous positions on several drives this game and put in spots where they could have let up or could have been potentially victimized. And they stepped up and made plays, and the passes being defended there in that stat. Again, like you said, Eric, like 10 is unreal. 4 of them coming from Tremaine Edmonds, like just in one game. Like I think on the year, coming into like week 17 or 16, like the leader in pass breakups was Sauce Gardner with 13. So think about that. Like Tremaine Edmonds had 4 in this one game. The Bills as a team had 10. It's hard to get those plays on the ball. And the Bills did it today on the defensive side. And we're going to dive into that defensive side towards the back half of this episode. But we'll start with the man that's on the graphic and that side of the ball, Mr. Josh Allen. Oh, a game today where he looked lights out to start, and then we started to see some inconsistencies, a bit of that mercurial Josh Allen play kind of crept into his game in terms of decision-making, potential ball placement issues, and some things like that. But Kev, when you look back on this game and you're thinking about how Josh Allen played today, what are your thoughts on his performance? Is there any one thing that you're taking away? Are you taking away a bunch of little things or a bunch of big things? Where do you sit right now, looking back on how Josh Allen played today?
He battled. I'm taking I think a bunch of little things away in this specific. I don't think I'm taking anything ginormous yet, especially without watching it back. But I think you saw him get in rhythm with Beasley later on, which was great. They were off. They were just off. You could tell he was throwing him high. He missed him a couple of times. He dug one into the ground earlier in the game. So, I think some mechanical things were popping up a little bit. He was feeling the prep. As good as he is against the blitz, as we see down the sideline to Diggs, as you mentioned in the first quarter, he struggled with it a little bit. He fumbled it. He just needs to eat it and go down in the fumble situation. He was trying to play Superman football, right? And that's what makes Josh Allen great. And I'm generally very pro Josh. I usually will take the negatives with Josh because that's who he is. So I do think he can kind of refine some mechanical things, trust more what he thinks he sees rather than forcing one of those drives. We saw that Josh drive, the deep, and then the sack. And that was just one of those drives where I thought he had other options. Other than that, though, I thought he played solid. He was really good in the first quarter. We still get those stretches of brilliance, just absolute brilliance from him at times. So they played really good defensively in stretches too, just like they played poor in defensively times. But and they got Josh a little bit. The 7 sacks is a lot. And that's That's a lot of sacks. I mean,
Yeah.
last 3 weeks total, probably 7 sacks, 4 weeks. He was feeling that, in my opinion, and that's kind of where I feel this kind of went. And they rattled him a tiny bit, but he's still the best player on the field, in my opinion. And I still think, had he needed a drive with the game tied, I think he would have came through.
Then, well, I'm just thankful, knock on wood, that we didn't have to get to that point. The defense was able to ice it out. Eric, this, I'm going to kick the same question to you in a minute. I wanted to grab something that, Kev mentioned, the pressure piece and the blitz, getting to Allen a bit. I think this is a part that I don't know if people don't know or overlook it, but coming into this game, there were 38 quarterbacks, well, regular season base, 38 quarterbacks with at least 40 attempts versus 5 or more rushers. Josh Allen was 27th in rating out of those 38 quarterbacks against 5 or more rushers, and 29th in EPA. So he was towards the bottom end of the league when it came to facing 5 or more rushers. And I think this is also a credit to, granted, everything is matchup specific and it'll base and vary on opponent. But this is something going back to, you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, it's something we talked about in the film room after week 3, after week 15, Miami's ability to throw almost every pressure look and pressure package in the book at Allen to try and confuse him, to try and tax him mentally. And then the coverages they pair with it on the back end. And then you add in their ability to win up front against the Bills' offensive line. They were really able to heat up Allen today in a variety of ways and make life difficult for him at times. Again, you see the total sack numbers, but they had him running for a bit, I think mentally, much like they did in week 3. But Eric, same question to you. And maybe that's your big takeaway. Maybe it's the pressure piece. Maybe it's what they did. But when you're looking back on, Josh Allen's performance today, is there anything that initially sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, it had to start with that because we knew that's their identity. They're going to run those cover 0 pressures. They're going to pop out of those. And I thought Allen, honestly, to start the game, handled it as good as he could. And the offensive line, too. Now, here, I'll bring up this play if you guys can see that. Here are the dots, courtesy of Next Gen Stats. And this was kind of like a theme that I saw in this game is you see everyone's up near line of scrimmage. Look at the leverage of Howard on Diggs. Look at the leverage of the slot corner and then the outside corner there. Obviously, they're going to be sending a bunch of guys here. I just feel like early on when the Dolphins did run these 0 pressures, what the Bills did, they did a great job of sliding. So you see Dawkins slide all the way to the right, and they have Motor come across the formation, pick up 21 in the gap, and then Dawson Knox is picking up Bradley Chubb, and they picked all of that up. And I feel like the Dolphins were almost game planning, like Josh is going to continue scrambling back past the 30 to buy time like we've seen him do. We saw him do it last week. I feel like they're like, okay, he's going to drop super deep to buy time and extend the play so he can push the ball down the field. But more times than not, when he saw that pressure, especially in the first half, he stopped his drop and he just set his feet. And that was important to hit these big plays because, yes, these are those volatile, aggressive plays, but these are the type of plays that can get the Dolphins out of those type of looks. And so as the game went on, there were some of those plays where Josh was feeling the pressure, or maybe it was a simulated pressure where there wasn't a free runner at him, but he felt like there was. So you saw him kind of go deep to Gabe Davis 2 times in a row, which I know a lot of people, are already complaining about in the chat. And I get it, but we'll have to look at the film a little closer. But my thing with that is those throws down the field, if it's whether it's a single high or it's a cover 0 look, like those in many ways are throwaways. Like those are many ways are throwaways, giving your guy a shot who's feeling it. Gabe Davis, welcome back. And then there were some of those crossers too, where he had levels. He had Shakir short, he had Diggs across the middle. So I do think he handled overall those cover 0 pressures quite well. And I'm interested to see some of those stats. But there were times, as Kevin said, where he took sacks, but I will say they weren't sacks that he was dropping back. He was trying to get back to the line of scrimmage, knowing that there's really nothing there, getting tackled 1 or 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, which was pretty big in the grand scheme of things.
And I think that's also where you have to give credit to Miami. Like they've got good dudes up front. Christian Wilkins is a stud on the interior. Sealer has been solid all year. You've got Jalen Phillips, who is really, it's funny watching Phillips and Greg Rousseau. I mentioned it this past week, like how both of them were high ceiling guys coming out of Miami, and both of them are starting to reach some of that ceiling potential. Phillips looked good. Bradley Chubb came into this game banged up, but he had a play or two today, and just they have the ability to win up front. And you combine that with good design or good schemability or good gamesmanship up front, and you have the opportunity to get beat. And Miami did that. in several ways in this game. And my big takeaway also with Josh is I think we saw today again some of, and I think we saw more of the live by the sword, die by the sword kind of Josh Allen, where, he is an aggressive guy and he likes to turn that dial up. And, sometimes he's got some players open underneath, but he wants to take the shot. And when it works to Stephon Diggs. When it doesn't, he pushes it downfield to John Brown when there's coverage leveraged over the top, when he could have dumped it, underneath and found some easy yardage to take some pieces away. And then when those don't work, he tries to push even further at times and he wants to get everything back. Like Josh Allen, it feels like he's always out for blood and he wants everything. But again, that's the nature of who he is, like the duality of man. Like that Josh Allen that pushes the ball too much downfield, even when there's not really a great opening for his receiver. That's the same Josh Allen that puts his shoulder down and tries to run over a linebacker to get you another 1 or 2 yards on every play. And I think that's a big piece looking and coming back from this game, especially again, before we're seeing the film and we're able to see the coverages and the full concepts and really being able to get the all 22 coaches tape view. But yeah, there were times I felt like he tried to take everything from the entire plate when he could have just taken little nibbles and moved everything. But again, I think that's the nature of who he is. Speaking of nature of who he is, we're going to find out the nature of another member from this team. I like that segue. I'm pretty proud of myself. Welcome to the stream. A little fashionably late, drinking a beer, rocking full Bills gear.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How you feeling?
Oh, I'm pretty drunk right now, to be completely honest.
I like the way that.
Honestly, Uber, we're like, okay, is he going to be coming down or going back up? Like we weren't sure, man, but
I'm still vibing.
All right.
But I want to go to Ant's point, and my ears are getting all messed up. All right. To go to Ant's point, I think this is a thing we have to understand with Josh Allen, right? Like, obviously, like, we live and die by Josh Allen. Like, he's going to go ham. He's going to drop bombs, and he's going to throw a couple bad picks. Like, we need to have that, and that's how you win a championship. You're either going to win a championship with him or lose a championship with him. Like, and I honestly believe, like, today we watched it, and we were like, man, there was moments where it's like, what are we doing right now? Why are you throwing these picks? What's happening right now? But at the end of the day, the Bills won the game, and Josh Allen was a massive part of that. Now they're going to probably play the Bengals next week. Like, we're going to see what happens with this Bengals-Ravens game tonight, right? But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Bengals-Bills, and you need Josh Allen slinging it. You need him throwing dimes. You need him taking risks to beat the Bengals. You cannot have, a Tyrod Taylor type quarterback. You're not going to have a Tyrod Taylor quarterback beating the Bengals. You need Josh Allen type quarterback to beat the Bengals.
Eric, when we look at, this is something we were talking offline before the show started, that the relationship of the play caller, offensive coordinator to the trigger man in Josh Allen, that relationship is so tremendously important. And when you're looking at not necessarily just Allen's performance today, but if you're looking at the offense as a whole, especially at the times when they were struggling, where did you kind of come down in your analysis, again, from a quick view perspective of just watching the game and broadcast angles and everything? What were your thoughts on the offensive struggles when they did happen at times in this game? Did you think it was more game plan or design issue? Did you think it was more individual execution, especially given all the variables and moving pieces that exist on any play? What were your thoughts on the overall game plan? And I guess, Ken Dorsey to a degree in this game.
Yeah, it seemed like maybe this had to do with some of those pressure looks and dropping those safeties down as spies and robbers and all those things post snap. But there were times where Josh didn't really push the ball over the middle, especially in that short area. There were times where Cole Beasley, especially in some empty sets, you had Cole Beasley to the trip side as an innermost slot. And he was open a lot, believe it or not, in that short area. And he was just running those curls and just sitting there. And Josh was going down the seam to Shakir, which, again, this adds to Uber's point. That's what you want. Like, he got so many guys involved. And, like, that you can talk about the turnovers, and we're seeing people comment about that. But he got so many people involved. And that's huge when you talk about playing a team like that, because they can't get a beat on where the ball's going to go. And so there were times where in that short area, especially over the middle, that he wasn't able to find a guy. There were times where a linebacker or safety would come down to the overload side as if he's blitzing, but he was just kind of hanging out behind that 3 or 4 man rush on the left side and just waiting to pop out when Josh tries to escape the pocket or when that wide receiver kind of sits in the middle. So I think some pre to post snap stuff was going on with Josh, but I thought for the most part, that pressure in his face, guys were kind of getting those bull rushes into his face, and the pocket was getting pushed into his face. And so he wasn't really pushing the ball over the middle. Minor thing, because there were some times that he did find those guys. And as I said, I think that's the biggest thing, is the way he was able to find targets for everybody. Like, that's dangerous. When you got Shakir coming in and making those type of catches and getting those kind of targets, Cole Beasley in those moments, those down and distance plays, Gabriel Dave, like, stop. So a lot of those vertical passes, that opened up some things kind of in that hook to curl area. So like between the hash and the numbers, kind of, and that's something that's an area that Josh hasn't attacked since Cole Beasley has left. So it's been nice to see. It was nice to see that type of distribution among the targets for the Bills.
That was a huge plus. We saw a real meaningful impact from Stephon Diggs, from Gabe Davis, from Dawson Knox, from Khalil Shakir, a couple from Cole Beasley. And yeah, that distribution, it goes into the whole tendency piece, right? Not allowing a defense to be able to sit back and try and anticipate and match up with what they think is coming. If they have to play everyone at all times, it's such a benefit for your offense to be able to dictate. Kev, same question to you. You know, what were your thoughts on the game plan today and how it tied into Josh's day overall?
I mean, they told him to be Josh, clearly. Like, I mean, he was aggressive. He was making plays. I thought the dime to Shakir was such a great throw, and just hit the turf. Like, he's so unlucky. I just think on a different day, that's a catch. And you can say that any game. But truthfully, early on, until the Bills started to have some things go right defensively later on in the game, but they were having just every bounce go away from them, like the fumbles into the end zone, just every single thing. The barely hitting the ground on the Knox to overturn it. Barely bobbling it by Shakir, which is really was a 14-point swing, guys. Like, it really was. It was that pivotal of a drop. But he was aggressive. I thought Shakir was great. I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for from a third receiver. Like, yes, I want him to catch that ball too, but he basically did. Just got unlucky with the way it bobbled around at the end and hit the ground. I mean, on the first live view, I mean, I think everyone thought he caught it.
I thought he caught it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. I didn't even know it had a chance. I saw a tiny bobble, but the other angle does show obviously hitting the ground, but just 5 targets, 3 catches, 51 yards, easily could have been a 100-yard day. And
he bailed Josh out on that 3rd and long. Like, if he doesn't catch that, he's covered. If he doesn't catch that, that's intercepted.
Yeah, it's going to get behind him and picked. Yep.
Yeah, it was. Luckily, we had a 5-yard hold on Diggs on that play. But yeah, the throw itself definitely would have been picked. It was a great play to make up for his drop. But that's kind of what we were like to see. I would have liked to see him a little bit more into the offense earlier on, besides just when McKenzie was hurt or out.
Dorsey was saving it, Kevin. All right, he was saving it.
I mean, if he can tell me that, and I'll believe it. I guess
after a day like that, okay.
I like to see him next week. I mean, I think he's earned it, and I think there's some promising potential out of the slot and his versatility on the offense going forward. But I think, Eric, you said it best, or maybe it was earlier this week. Gabe Davis showed who he can be. He's a more than serviceable receiver too. He was great today.
Some dimes to him, right?
Dimes to him. He was getting his feet in today. He seems more focused. I don't know what it is, but he comes up big, and he has came up big minus a few lapses at this season. And I think the Bills have some really good potential receivers next year if they can just add a little bit to the room. But all in all, Josh was aggressive. And I thought, to Uber's point earlier, I think to an extent, that's what you need to be the team like the Bengals and soon the Chiefs, is that aggressive style of Josh. Let's get rid of some of this pressure sacks. But other than that, wasn't a lot of his fault. And Miami spied him well. I will say that. Yeah. I thought he was going to break about 4 runs, and they just got him down.
Yeah, they had their rush lane and rush package built. And again, that's one of the things of you're seeing a team now for the 3rd time, and everything that they do, you've seen on tape for up to this point, but you've also played them twice. You've game planned against them twice. You've reviewed that film twice. Like, you know who they are and they know who you are, and you're able to play off that piece. Familiarity is such a murky thing and a variable for matchups. Eric, you have Gabe Davis's touchdown from Josh Allen queued up on the screen right now. A beautiful throw that, the dots make it look pretty. I'm sure the tape is going to make it look even better.
Amazing.
This was one that, was a good route from Gabe. He looks inside and sells that inside a piece and then pops out to the corner there. But Josh really threw this open and made a beautiful throw. And Gabe had a fantastic, he caught it, and the way he catches it and got both feet down, just a real beautiful finish from Gabe Davis, but also a tremendous throw by Allen to throw him open in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah, and also something that we haven't really talked about is, yes, Dorsey has used Diggs in the slot a lot, but I'm interested to see what the numbers were for this game, because especially that first quarter, they had him all over the place on the field, and they motioned him just about every play. And so on this type of play on the fringe of the red zone, when coaches like to take these shots, you see him just run a little diagonal route. So he's obviously going to hold Xavier Howard right there on 1st and 10 here in the third quarter. And of course, he's also working towards this safety. So that safety it's not like he's going to be working to stay over the top, because the guy's running right at him. And so, as Anthony said, I just thought that throw, it had such good control and pace to the ball, and the placement was perfect. Something that Josh, I mean, when he was on today, he was really on, like the Knox throw for the touchdown. And this one, he placed it, pretty much eye level so that Gabriel could worry about getting his feet down. So it was very wide receiver friendly. We always talk about being QB friendly, wide receivers for their QBs, but Uber, this throw and touch on this, I was incredibly impressed from Josh Allen, especially in that second half when Romo and the crew just kept talking about, oh, they're so nervous, they're so uptight. Like, he just bam.
Yeah, and watch the dots there. Like, credit to Ken Dorsey here, right? If you go back, rewind, there you go. Yep. Rewind those dots a little bit. Like, they basically set it up. You're like, all right, you got Gabe Davis over the top. Like, that's your tutty pass. But then you have your blanket underneath, and I don't remember who it is underneath there. Who is it? Shakir or Cole? So he has a blanket. Yeah, it's Cole there. So it's like you go for the tutty, or you have a blanket where you're going to get the first, essentially, because it really opens up really wide the second Gabe breaks into that safety spot.
Yeah.
There was points today where you look at Josh Allen, and he just had complete control of this football game. There was other points, like even his 2 interceptions, right? You go back to those things. You see that one deep ball to John Brown. If he throws it to the outside shoulder, that's a touchdown. He throws it the inside shoulder, it's an interception. You look at the one to Cole Beasley. It was a weird play, frustrating play. Like, it was a 50-50 kind of interception play. Josh Allen played a close to flawless game outside of those 2 balls, and it's just like these moments, like when Josh plays in the playoffs, he elevates, and we're watching him elevate right now. And I think when we go play the Bengals next week, or play whoever we're going to play next week, it's going to be the Bengals. You're only going to see a better version of him.
And that's a funny piece too, like in talking about some of like the splitting of the hairs when it comes to certain pieces for Josh Allen. I think that can be applied to the offense and football in general. There are so many things that have to go right or work into going into a play. Like, you have to have the right play call against the right play call from the defense. Your offensive line has to pass protect. They have to recognize what's going on. Your quarterback has to recognize what's going on. Your receivers have to recognize what's going on. Your receivers have to get open. Your receivers have to catch the ball. Like, there are a multitude of things that have to happen. And, for me, especially in taking everything that you guys have said, like, one of my takeaways from the offense, or like the design of it from this game, I've seen some of it in the chat, saw a bunch of it on Twitter, even though I got off Twitter for the entire second half because I was superstitious and I thought that might turn the tide, and I'm going to credit myself for the tide turning on that one. There were a lot of times where Josh potentially had other options, but he pushed that deep ball. But then even within that, like, he pushed that deep ball. Who knows what this game turns out to be if Khalil Shakir makes that catch at the end of the second quarter, or if Gabe Davis is able to bring that one back when he tries to moss Kohu, which could have been a catch twice. He could have caught it here, and they could have caught it on the bobble. Like, there were so many little hair splitting moments that, whether it was drops or whether it was a decision from Allen, or especially pass protection up front, I thought there were so many things that kind of went wrong for the Bills in this game that weren't necessarily tied to the play design or the concept. And the Bills still came out and put up 34 points. Like, all these things were going sideways, and pass protection was really shoddy at times. Guys were dropping balls. Guys were unable to separate. Like, the scheme of what Miami was doing worked at times. And then you're sitting there and it's just like, oh man, like, they still put up 34 points. And I'm just sitting, like, thinking of everything Miami did well and that Buffalo needs to work on, but we're still coming out with like 34 points and wondering what they can do going forward as a team, and just being able to execute that piece. And Eric, you're pulling up some next gen stats from a passing leader perspective, looking at the wild card. What's got your eye right now as you start to pull that up?
I just want to put it in perspective. Like, most of us have watched all of the games that have already transpired this weekend, and we're talking about, oh yeah, he was way too aggressive. And yeah, he was. But if you look at his aggression percentage compared to other guys in other games this week, it kind of frames some things. So yes, there were some deep shots. Again, I think more throwaways than actual, like, oh yeah, they're going for the throat again. But they got some one-on-one matchups, Gabriel Davis, as I said. So it kind of just frames the whole argument about it. And again, we'll get a better look from the film, but I mean, he's second to last right now in aggression percentage according to next gen stats for this weekend. So we've seen all the games, and we want to keep it relative not only to just this game with the Bills and Dolphins, but also across the league, because there were times that, again, there were guys open down the field, but there are also times over the middle that Josh should have taken that easy one, and that's the one that I had an issue with. Uber mentioned it, the one to Brown. Normally he kind of runs it. It's almost like a V, and then they run it to the front pylon. And usually it's just a clearing route, but this route was a little different. It was almost a primary alert call because there's only one wide receiver. I think they had like 12 or 13 or some different personnel that was heavy trying to show a run there. But that one, John is going to bend it back to the pylon. Josh threw him upfield, and I'm not making excuses for him. I didn't like the decision. I didn't like the decision to throw that, but I can see why he wanted to, based on the leverage that John Brown had on Xavier Howard. Howard was taking away the middle of the field, taking away that post. John Brown's running to that pylon. And as Uber said, if Josh throws it to the pylon or to the boundary and throws him to a spot that he can run to, he's going to catch that ball. And as Uber said, probably score. That was the main one I had an issue with, because I didn't like the decision just because they had just run it like 2 times in a row and had success. They're just starting to get into it and really get the Dolphins off balance there. And then he just took that shot, and it really just swung the momentum completely. That's when the game really turned, right?
Yeah. But it was a weird route, right? Like, you saw John Brown kind of question where he was going. Like, he goes inside, he kind of questions going outside. And I think that kind of messed with Josh a little bit. And that's why you saw the ball kind of go a little inside. I think Josh probably, if I had to go back and think of like what was happening in the exact moment, I think Josh sailed it inside. So I will I'll blame Josh for that. Like, you don't sail it inside there. You got to sail it out. Like, at a minimum, sail it outside. It goes out of bounds. There's no interception that's going to happen there. Josh has to throw it there, and it was a bad throw by him at the end of the day, and that's an interception. That kind of changed the tide of the game to a moment. But in all reality, at the end of the day, the Bills win the game. So that's just a kind of blot on the radar of what happened today.
Yeah.
I think even with that one too, like my biggest thing with that play, like I wanted him to take the check down to Singletary, who looked like he had 6 or 7 yards of space underneath. I would say, if you look at it on the dots piece, I think Morris releases out, is underneath in the flats too. But just
I don't like this decision. Yeah,
just check it down to Singletary.
Morris, I mean,
and what's the down and distance on this one?
This was 1st and 10. 1st and
10, like you're at midfield, you're up by 14. There's no reason to push this at all. Again, in my estimation, especially because it's 1st down, dump it off to Singletary, get 5 or 6. Maybe even more if he breaks the tackle. Look where Jerome Baker is. Jerome Baker is bailing hard. Granted, the ball's in the air at this point, but he was significantly in his drop. Get it out to Singletary early like he has against the Patriots in the past, or even dump it off to Morris on the drag. But I'd love him to take Singletary there instead of forcing this downfield. Even if he puts it to I think, to Uber and Eric, to your point, if he puts it on the outside shoulder more, there's a higher chance of a, catch probability here. But for me, like, I don't even want you to throw that pass. Just take the 6 or 7 yards. And keep moving down the field. You're up 14. You're at midfield. 1st and 10. Like, just keep going with it.
3rd and 10.
It's the decision for me. Yeah, exactly. Like, if it's 3rd and 10 or you're down 17-3 and you're trying something again, like, I think this is where it comes back to what I said earlier. Like, Josh is always out for blood. He wants everything. He wants to maximize everything. And on that one, that's the maximizing it throw, right? You're trying to hit a 53-yard touchdown and put this game up 24-3 and try and put it to bed. There's no reason to do it in that regard. Like, you can keep, matriculating the ball down the field.
And take that McKenzie one, right? And against the Bears, wasn't it kind of like that?
Oh, the one that got picked in the red zone.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that was
it
like
was-
more of an over route. I
Yeah,
think.
Yeah, it was more of
safety.
an over
Yeah.
double covered, really.
But it's a similar
similar
from,
mindset. Yeah,
from,
Yeah.
from a
not
mindset
route.
perspective. Like
sure.
you don't need to push it there. Like there's no reason
Right.
to force that throw. This isn't the last throw of the game, and you're like, screw it, I might as well take a chance. Like you got plenty of plays to live going forward. And yeah, like Uber, like you said, it ended up being a huge momentum piece. Not only does Howard get the pick, he has a really good run back. It brings the ball back over midfield, set the Dolphins up for success. The Bills hold them to
Huge run
3.
back.
Huge run back. Sticking with the offensive side of the ball, Uber, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the offensive line performance today? A group that has been leaky at times. They've been inconsistent. They've had a lot of mercurial performances. Miami did a lot today from a schemability standpoint, but also won some one-on-one matchups. What were your thoughts on, if you're looking back, seeing what the Bills did offensively on the line today? How do you feel about their performance as a group?
So I find it hard to like kind of evaluate this. But again, first watch, right? Like I haven't watched it a second time,
Right.
but first watch going back and being like, the Dolphins knew they had to force turnovers. They had to create pressure. Like there was no way they were going to win this game if they didn't do those things. And to go back and kind of think about this, like they did a very good job of that. And
They did.
Jalen Phillips is a stud, and Christian Wilkins is a stud. They have studs up front, and I don't.
And
know
Sealer
if
always gives the Bills up the middle. Sealer always gives the Bills issues too up the middle.
He's good.
Sealer played, and that's a name that very
He's getting
few
paid,
NFL
by the
fans
way.
know. Oh, he's
So
going to
good.
get money. He's good. He's really freaking good. And so I look at all that and I just say to myself, like, this might be the best defensive line. Like, yeah, obviously, if we get to the Chiefs, we got to fight Chris Jones. Chris Jones is an absolute force. That's it. That's one guy though, right? Like, and they might have Frank Clark and all that stuff, but like Chris Jones is a stud. I actually think we might have played the best defensive line we're going to play this postseason. And we did kind of an okay enough job. Okay enough, right? Like 34 points is still something. Like we put points on them, right? So like if you're really gonna blitz, and at times they were sending 6. Like you saw them, they went in cover 0, they put the 6 guys right on the line. They're like, all right, we're gonna come at you, Josh. You see what you can do. And Josh still made plays. Like you saw that 62-yard bomb to Diggs when they were rushing 6. Like I just think the Bills, because of Josh Allen, can kind of compete with that pass rush and compete with better defensive lines than what we have offensive lines. And really, if I keep going through this in my head, I think this is the best defensive line we're going to face this offseason or this postseason.
Kevin, what are your thoughts? Bills offensive line, mercurial performance. Yeah, especially even like taking into context of, Uber's thoughts of what Miami represents on their defensive line. Kev, where do you sit on how the Bills O-line played today?
I think it was a challenge. I mean, to Uber's point, I think it was a challenging matchup. They are better than I, thought. Definitely need to rewatch it and take a look at what I see, but they have presence all over the field. And we talked about how banged up they are, right? Pretty much all week leading up, the third quarterback, whatever. They looked pretty good defensively today. They looked fairly full strength, minus a few pieces. They're missing their safety, Agba, a couple of things that they could even be better, which is I guess scary. But they will lose some pieces in free agency. But I thought ultimately they really put some pressure on our offensive line. They really strained it. I was interested to see how the Bengals and or the Jags react to their game plan, to see if that's something that they try to implement. I don't think, to Uber's point, either have the type of personnel that Miami had in this situation. They were really good at running certain blitz packages, certain looks that they gave the offensive line. I remember the one where they just got to Josh before he finished his drop. That was the play to me that was like, what a well-timed blitz. Like, what are you even supposed to do on that? It was just they called the right play. And I think it went right by Morse, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. It was like right up the A gap, wasn't it?
Off the top of my head.
It was a pretty aggressive play, and it was a good. They attacked our offensive line. They really did hold our running game in check. I mentioned how well they played gaps against Josh, and he really couldn't find. Even though he thought he saw a gap based on what the coverage, he still got gobbled up by Wilkins and others. So they put some pressure on the O-line. It is a little bit scary to me as we continue on further on. But the O-line puts together some good games at times, and I'm still holding out hope that we see one of those coming up. We'll see what Hendrickson and Hubbard are able to do coming up. But I thought they put a fair amount of pressure and really did, back to Josh's, some of his struggles, were because of that.
I literally just grabbed that, Eric, and saw it came up. I'm like, did I share my screen already? What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the tweet that just came out. Also, shout out
52.
to Doug, who
Yeah,
as soon
thanks
as
for
he
letting us
said it,
know.
yeah, awesome grab, Doug. So we immediately pulled up the Twitter from Next Gen Stats. And Eric, you got it right there. Josh Allen was blitzed on 52.2% of his dropbacks today, his highest rate faced since week 14 of 2020. Just a ton of pressure that Miami was throwing at Allen. Again, we mentioned it earlier. Out of the 38 qualifying quarterbacks that had at least 40 attempts against 5 or more rushers, Allen was 27th in rating coming into this game, 29th in EPA. So that was a potential matchup advantage Miami could lean into, and they dialed it up over and over today.
They always do too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's something we always talk about in the film room. Like that's their identity. They want you to get rid of the ball quickly and then rally and tackle. You know, Romo, I think Romo pointed that out. You know, you're seeing that percentage, and he didn't complete all that many. He completed 4 out of 11 for 139 yards, a touchdown, interception. But that's why those explosive plays were so important. Again, it allowed them to open up some things later in the game. But if you look at those numbers versus, what he's seen on the year, according to PFF, Josh Allen has faced the blitz 28.5% of the time. He's completing 56% of those passes for 1,005 yards. His yards per attempt is 6.1. So it's the lowest when you're looking at kept clean, under pressure, not blitz. And then when blitz, it's the lowest at 6.1, but he's still getting 9 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So there are times, yes, the blitz is going to get home, but there are times, and 10 times this year, he's going to make big time throws. He's got a 5.8 big time throw percentage when he is blitz, and an average depth of target at 8.7. So there are going to be plays where he's going to hit those down the field. There are going to be plays where he's going to take off and make some big plays with his legs. So it was important to hit some of those deep balls against that pressure. And I know half of that is probably that Diggs play, but as I said, the way he stood in there on several of those cover 0 pressures, and he found Diggs on a couple different plays, that was big. That was super big, and not just running out of the back of the pocket like we've seen in the past with him. So interesting stats there. 52.2% of his dropbacks were a blitz. That's pretty damning, and kind of makes sense too, right, Ant? Because from a defensive scheme perspective, they play a lot of those 5-man surfaces, whether they're in base defense or not. So there's going to be 5 there. And then again, sometimes they'll add a linebacker, drop someone on the edge out. But that kind of makes sense when we're looking at their scheme too.
Yeah, it fits given that 5-man service that they like to lean into, and just who they are. Again, Eric, like we said, in their identity coming into this game. So regular season stats, Miami was 6th in blitz rate this year at 35%. So again, 52% is a 17 percentage point increase, which is a lot, but that's not necessarily completely unheard of for Miami in terms of leading into that. They are very much, for as much as Josh Allen is kind of live by the sword, die by the sword, that's what Miami is on defense. You're going to get them attacking you. And if you beat them and gouge them, they're like, okay, cool, you got us. But they are going to try to heat you up. They are going to take the fight to you. They are going to give you pressure from a quarterback standpoint, from a receiver standpoint. They're going to dare you to beat them in coverage, to beat them in your route distribution, in a variety of ways. And they challenged the Bills today. And again, you're going to see that when you have that risk reward type of attack that the Bills had today, you're not going to be tremendously efficient. Nobody's going deep all the time and hitting 90% of their passes 20 yards or more. But when you do connect, it swings the pendulum because it's such an explosive play.
Yeah, and if you guys look real quick, this is week 15. They only blitzed him 17.4% of the time in that game.
Yep.
And he was 5 for 8 for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I'll go ahead and bring up the week 3 matchup. Here it is. They blitzed him 38.4% of the time. So you can see they kind of changed back. So initially in that week 3 matchup, they brought the pressure. Week 15, they kind of dropped back. And then obviously this time 52% is up there, man. Holy cow.
And to give the kind of the Dolphins some credit here, right? In watching this game, just essentially the first watch bird's eye view of it, you see Josh, he steps back to the pass, he sees a lane up the middle to run, which he does over and over against the best teams in football. And he always can break 5, 6, 7, 8 yard runs up the middle. He was trying to do that all game, but you have Seiler and you have Wilkins with their freaking long arms reaching out and grabbing him, pulling him down for 2 yard runs. So I don't know if we're going to face another team this postseason that has that incredibly talented interior defensive line like the Dolphins did. I mean, maybe the Bengals do with DJ Reader. Like DJ Reader is very good, but he's very good against traditional running backs. He's not as quick against a scrambling quarterback. So I just watch. I remember I found myself watching this game and just being like, Allen is just this close. He's this close to breaking that run. Like if you just gave him one more step, man, you're talking about a 20-yard run in a couple of plays, and he just couldn't get it today.
Yeah, you have to give credit to Miami for, again, their rush lane integrity.
Sure.
And I think you almost saw them at times. They would rush almost knowing, hey, if we do these two things, he's going to go do this. So you would almost see them like rush and then be like, there he goes. And they'd close and they'd swarm. Eric, you had that dots play that you just brought up. So that was the sack fumble that led to the touchdown for Miami. This was one, again, on the broadcast view and even here on the dots. I wanted him to look at that hot route right away, seeing Eric Rowe at the line of scrimmage. This is one, too, that I saw a lot of people in the chat saying, like, we need to work in more hot routes. We need to work in more hot routes. This one's on Josh. Like, he needs to see this and understand.
Think about flashback to week 15. Ant, sorry to interrupt you, but week 15, he found Hines on this very same play. In the red zone.
Similar to, not the exact same, but similar to what he did with Singletary in week 3 on the touchdown in the red zone. And then later in the game, ability to
how far does 26 go here? Like, I mean, potentially not only just a hot route option. I mean,
he's got room.
20 yards at least.
Yeah. But that's you see the pre-snap alignment of what Miami has. And at the very least, even if they don't bring it, but when you see Gilliam go in motion and there's nothing on the left side, you at least have to peek and see if Eric Rowe, number 21, is coming. And if he is, it's an easy dump off. Josh's head doesn't even go to that left side. He stays right side focused the entire way, and Miami makes him pay.
Yeah, which is surprising because Phillips is right there. He slants into that gap to kind of get Dawkins' attention, and that frees up Rowe off the edge there. So yeah, this one's on Josh. This one's on Josh. Find your hot route. You've done it before. You typically do it quite well versus this team, even if it is a minor gain. This one, as Kevin said, this would have been a big gain.
A big gainer. Is this route traditionally supposed to go to Morris in the seam? What's the plan here? Had it been blocked up?
Yeah, I mean that I honestly wouldn't know. Let me bring it back up.
Because that's where I was going to. Like, what's his bite right here? Like, he's looking at the right side. Where is he? What's it? He sees something
looks
there.
Good.
What's he kidding?
Yeah.
Well, I think you're looking at a single high look. You're looking at a single high look, and it really shows as almost like man coverage. And I think that's what kind of threw him off here, and why you see Morris go up the seam, because you can kind of see Baker, Roberts, and Rowe, as Ant said, kind of hanging out to that heavy set. And then once Gilliam goes across the formation, you see, I think that's Ingram, number 6, kind of peel off. Like, you just got to find that guy in the flats, and everything changes. Because if you're not comfortable, just find your outlet, right? I mean, that's something that he's actually gotten better at. But this is one of those plays that, he just had Devin. And I think Morse down the seam might be it versus this single high look, especially with the way 52 Roberts kind of vacates with Knox. He's got multiple guys open. Let's be honest. He's got multiple guys open, but with that pressure, that free runner, you just got to get it to Devin.
I think if I'm remembering from the broadcast, he looks, I think, to Diggs, but because Ingram is flashing underneath it, covering Gilliam, he doesn't throw it to Diggs. So then he goes to look left, and as he goes to look left, he gets clocked by Rowe, and that's where the strip sack comes through.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense.
And even watching the dots there, like, that's one of those balls you can just throw to the left side, and it's not going to get picked. Like, you can just throw it there and hope your dude catches it. If he doesn't, it's an incomplete pass. Like, that's one of those things where it's kind of like, Allen, come on, man. Like, you just got to be better than that. But at the end of the day, like,
I'll give credit to Miami there too. That was a good call.
Yeah,
ball in the left hash. You have that tight set. That was a good pressure from
one
them.
of the other well-timed blitzes. They caught it. Like, they caught it with Gilliam in motion and Singletary leaking out. Like, it's just a well-timed blitz.
It's a good design too, like Eric said. Like, you're bringing that blitz from the boundary, and you have that look, and that's something, again, Miami has done. I hated that the Bills lost in week 3, but I really came away from their defensive performance tremendously impressed with what Boyer did. Like, the line I kept saying coming into this game and going into week 15, it felt like Boyer literally just was up all off season crafting a defensive game plan
Yeah.
for week 3 because he threw everything and they executed. And they had a really good game plan. Granted, the heat stroke and heat flu and everything came into play, but Miami had a great game plan in week 3. And I thought today they had several pieces that worked as well.
And Dolphins fans, from my experience with Dolphins fans, they hate Boyer. They hate him. They think he's trash. They think he's awful. I watched this game today thinking to myself, like, yeah, Boyer has a freaking great game plan. Maybe not after the first quarter where the Bills were having their way with the Dolphins, but you go in the second, third, and then to the fourth quarter, I found myself looking at it saying, like, Boyer's playing a very good game. He's playing the long game here, and it's really working out for the Dolphins.
Yeah, they attacked again today, and it's hard to consistently be creative and win when you are so attack-minded on defense because it opens you up and makes you vulnerable. And they've been successful with that recipe, even as Flores has left and Boyer's continued it. Let's flip it to the other side of the ball. So the Bills defense in this game. Let's start with some individual highlights or standouts in this game. And Uber will stick with you here as we start to go.
I got one.
I would say Tremaine Edmonds balled out, Matt Milano balled out, Kyrie. Go ahead. Which one? Who you got?
Yeah, I got mine. I mean, anybody that follows me on Twitter knows who I'm going to here is Matt Milano. Absolutely sexy motherfucker. Sorry for my language. Sexy dude, like just killing it. But he had one really, really bad play, right? On the right side, I can't even remember it was third and 12 or something. Just break down and make the tackle. Like, hold him up. Just body him, hold him up, and let the bodies come to you. And he just blew that tackle. That really sucked. But outside of that, Matt Milano played one of those games that you expect from an all-pro, especially all-pro first team, which I'm so stoked that man got that because he is very deserving of it. Like, Matt Milano is a heat-seeking missile when he sees a ball carrier, and he's going to come get you. He's going to eat you, and he's going to destroy you. And today, Matt Milano did that outside of that one play. And I loved every single second of it.
That one was a bit too. No, I think it was Jeff Wilson on that.
Is that
one.
Jeff Wilson?
Yeah, that was a bit too much heat-seeking missile. Like he came.
That was bad. That was really
right
bad.
Away. Yeah, and this might have been the play.
4th and 8 too, right? It was what down was that?
Oh yeah, this is 4th and 8.
It was 4th and 8.
Oh, it was 4th
and 8. And I think him and Wilson were jawing at each other either right before this or earlier in the game. And so I wonder if Milano saw like Wilson was looking back and Milano was like, I'm going to light this dude up. And the timing just wasn't there.
Hey, but he dove at his legs. He dove at his legs. That's the weird thing to me. He dove at his legs. Like, he could have just bodied him, just gone in, like hugged him to death.
Use the sideline. Yep.
Sideline is your friend.
Come in.
Yeah, or just
and he didn't do it.
No, he got a little too aggressive, a little too much heat-seeking missile on that one. Kev, who stood out for you on the defensive side of the ball? Was it Edmonds? Was it Milano? Was it Kyer? Taron Johnson had a good game. Who are you looking at in terms of somebody who immediately, caught your eye?
Couple good defensive options. I think Uber covered Milano for us.
Yeah.
But Elam, I mean, just quite frankly, how he came up big. I don't know how many snaps he was anticipated for before the Dane injury.
Yes.
I don't know if we would have seen him much at all. I really don't know that we would have. Maybe, but I can't say either way. But the way he potentially stepped in for Dane and played the majority of the snaps, he was fantastic. That's exactly what you're looking for out of a first-round corner. He wasn't just guarding some fifth receiver on the Jets. This was Tyreek Hill at times. This was their top-end receivers, top of the league. And he played really well. The pass breakups, like just the interception. I mean, the knockdown to win. I thought he was fantastic, whether he was guarding Gesicki or Hill. He's exactly what you're looking for in a game where you needed him, where you might have been bringing some pressure at times, and he was out on an island. I saw him one-on-one with Hill and man coverage. So he played awesome. He definitely gets my game ball, and much maligned at times, like we've said, defensive backs have struggled to make plays on the ball, and he didn't today.
Yeah, that play to effectively end the game against Gesicki. Tremendous play at the catch point. Obviously, he had the interception earlier, which I really liked, and I'm pretty sure, but I want to see the all-22. I think the Bills were in cover 2, but there's nobody underneath holding him, right? So there's nobody underneath holding him. So he just keeps sinking with his man because he's not just going to cover grass, and he just keeps dropping, and he gets a nice little pick thrown right into his lap. My favorite one from him, this is the one that caused Jeff Wilson to have the calf injury and take him out. It's a run into the boundary.
Yeah.
And Elam comes flying up and fits that run and gets underneath the man and then gets a piece of Wilson and brings him
Cuts
down.
his legs out.
Takes him right out at the knees. And he had a good game once he came in, and it was needed. Like in a game where the Bills defense was holding up and kind of holding up, and you needed somebody to make a play. We saw plays earlier in the game, but as the game was going on, you just needed somebody to kind of turn the tide. And Elam gets a toxic differential play with the interception. He closes it out with that breakup on Gesicki. Really strong game from Kaiir Elam, and nice to see, kind of basically in, quote unquote spot duty coming in for Dane Jackson, who, for all intents and purposes as well, Dane was having a really good game in coverage before he went down as well. The Bills secondary came to play in this one. Eric, kick it to you as well. Standout for you. Is it?
It is. It's Edmonds. Third on the team in tackles, 5 total tackles behind Taron Johnson, Matt Milano. But we saw a little bit of everything from him today. We saw him do his normal clogging the middle of the field, making those passing windows that much more difficult. Like on that play where he was, carrying Gesicki down the field, gets his hand up into the passing lane, which it seemed to disrupt the catching.
He got a piece of it. He got a piece of the ball. He slightly tilted.
But either way, he affected that throw, right? So we saw some of those plays where he was just, they're running curl routes at 4 to 6 yards, and he's just coming from his, 7 to 9 yard depth, breaking on the ball, hitting the running back there. I think it was Wilson. And this was after he already lit up some guys. He was setting the tone with some of his hits. And I think that really, again, not only helped him in pass coverage, but like you could see Wilson when he was going to catch that little curl route, he was bracing for a big hit. And then, as I said at the top, his pass rushing in this game with his length and his ability to add on as a rusher, having the guy running back in man coverage and realizing, oh, he's staying in the block. Well, guess what? I can add on. Like his pass rushes were really, really quality rushes today. And, did he always get home? No, but he was very disruptive, whether it was with his length and when the quarterback was getting rid of the ball or just flushing that quarterback out of the pocket. Because when Thompson gets on the run, he's not that good of a passer. And I think they knew that going in. So getting him off the spot and getting him on the move was part of, some of those throws. I mean, he was just throwing some ducks on the run.
Yeah. And Edmonds was a key point in that. It seemed like, again, every time he blitzed, he got Thompson off the spot. And then what I thought was a key one too, it wasn't just like he blitzed and got him off the spot and then was out of the play. Like he'd break down and retrace and flush him further. And you saw good angles in attacking Thompson from the D-line when they got him flushed. But yeah, Edmonds' ability to affect the pass in coverage, affect the pass from a blitz perspective. He had a couple nice sticks against the run. He really brought it today. Absolutely crushed Ahmed in the flats. Had that real nice breakup on Wilson. You saw deterrent plays. You saw splash plays. Just a really strong game from those 3 players that we wanted to highlight here. And let's talk about the defensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. Eric, we talked about it earlier when someone was criticizing the lack of blitzing or game plan from the Bills defense. The Bills used a lot of simulated pressures in this game, creeper pressures in this game. They blitzed a bunch, which again makes sense given Skylar Thompson's struggles against 5 or more rushers.
And
we
the
saw
offensive
them
line. I mean, they're not a good offensive line. They have a lot of injuries.
Bringing up a practice squad guy. Again,
right tackle.
There you go. You're moving Hunt from guard to right tackle. And sample size, again, will definitely play a role. But when facing 5 or more rushers this year, Skylar Thompson has a yards per attempt of 1.6. and he has a rating of 53. So it was in the cards a bit for this is how you should attack this guy, which isn't necessarily jiving with what the Bills' MO is on defense. They want to just rush 4 and they want to sit back and play 7 in coverage and vary what they do on the back end. But we saw more of an attack-minded nature from the Bills' defense in this game. Again, Eric, especially as the game went on, what did you think about Leslie Frazier's game plan in terms of, I guess overall, but really how they went against who they have been from their identity in order to really heat up Skylar Thompson?
Yeah, I think the cool thing that we're going to watch on the film is how, as they added on rushers, how they managed on the back end to force this quarterback to throw outside at this frequency, right? Mm-hmm. You're adding on those rushers, but yet you're not getting those passes over the middle, which is where, when you're blitzing as often as they did, that's where the area of the field that's wide open, you have, it's easy for a guy like Thompson too, even though he's not that good of a passer. So I think it did catch them off guard how often they went deep. But that's kind of that you got to live with that, right? Like
Yeah.
if they're going to beat you, I want him throwing those low percentage passes down the field. Some were dropped, but some were just not even catchable. So I think Frazier, as I said at the top, I think he showed us a variety of blitzes, all types of blitzes, not just your normal 5-man pressures with, Palms coverage on the back end in those 2 high looks. They played some different coverages on the back end to kind of aid some of that 5 and 6-man pressures that they're running with those linebackers. And I think having a guy like Elam in there is nice to have because, as we can see, he can play man coverage, great recovery speed, and that interception, yes, Anthony said it was more of his own coverage. So, I mean, it's really the best of both worlds because he was making those windows a lot tighter in man coverage when the Bills were kind of pushing the pocket.
That's a huge piece that I'm excited to see on the tape because there were times where Skylar Thompson broke contain and you saw him just like looking, like almost being like anybody, please get open. Like I want to throw the ball. And there was just nothing. And then he'd get to the sideline and you have to chuck it out. Like what they did downfield combined with what they did up front, it largely, overall worked. I mean, Thompson was 18 of 45 for 222 yards. And, he had some chunk gains thrown in there, but they made an inexperienced quarterback play inefficiently today. They made him uncomfortable consistently starting out. But then again, even as the game went on and momentum was on Miami's side, they really leaned into it. Kev, same thing to you. What were your thoughts on how the defensive played today? Was it one thing in particular? Was it wholesale, large scale takeaway? Is it Frazier based? What were your thoughts on the defense overall?
I thought they had a really good game plan. I mean, I thought they, mixed some things up. I thought they brought pressure at times. I thought they knew exactly what they wanted to do, as you guys have both talked about, getting him on the move. You're right. At a time, it looked like he had a 12-yard run, pretty easy first down. He just duffed it into the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess if you're Josh Allen, you might try to make that throw. Josh to Knox on the touchdown that was dropped, but it was also a great throw and it was right there.
But to your point though, they made him have to make like low percentage attempts, and he didn't even want to do that. He was like, "Screw it, I'll just throw it out of bounds or dirt it."
Right, and he dirted it, and in the time, and he did have a 12-yard. I heard about Skylar Thompson's athleticism. I know some people at Kansas State who told me he was really athletic. You can get him on the move. He doesn't have like Justin Fields level athleticism, but he's pretty good, like pretty athletic.
Yeah, he had. I think he had over like 200 rushing attempts in college, which at Kansas State makes sense.
Yeah,
it does, but we just didn't see that. Like we haven't seen that here, so I don't know.
He even had times today where it looked like he could be. Romo got this one right on the broadcast. Like just he could have just tucked the ball and ran, but he was still trying to push it downfield. Yeah, it was odd.
I don't know what that offensive game plan was. Like, don't run. I don't know where they got that from, but
don't run, no matter what.
I don't know what that happened there, but honestly, to sum it up, I thought it was a great game plan. I thought they knew what they were attacking, and let's be honest, in different, not very good situation for the defense at times to let up. They were putting some hard positions, and 18 to 21 points weren't their fault.
Sure. Uber, same to you. Thoughts on the defense? Again, they give up 31 points, really 24, because 7 of that was from the defensive touchdown for Miami. Where you sit on the Bills D?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some concern because you're playing a quarterback that is well below the level of quarterbacks going to play the remainder of the season. But at the same time, the game plan made complete sense, right? Like make him throw it, make him play into this defense. And the palm scheme that the Bills play is so freakishly dominant against quarterbacks that are inexperienced. And it ate him up. Like it literally ate him up. You saw him panic. At the most panic moment was when he had that run. He was scrambling out of the pocket and he kind of ran to the left very early in the game. I think it was like second drive, right? Like he had a lane. He could have run for the first down. Teron Johnson was kind of stopped down. Like Teron was ready to kind of battle with him, but it was going to be between Teron and him to get that first down. And he just dirted the ball. And it's just like, but you could have run. You probably were going to get that first down, but he just had no. Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott's defense, we don't talk about the scheme enough, right? Like the national media and all this stuff doesn't talk about how dominant this scheme is against quarterbacks. And they just continually make quarterbacks look bad. And it's Skylar Thompson who you're going to make look bad. Now I want to see them do the same thing next week it's going to be Joe Burrow. Like we know it's going to be Joe Burrow. Like that's who we're going to have to make look bad.
Could be Trevor
It's
Lawrence.
Not going to be Snoop. It's not going to be Snoop. Like
I mean,
If
they
it's
averaged
Snoop, it's going to be
what,
Lamar. It's going to be Lamar.
the passing attempts 3.9 yards per play. I mean, that's 18 of 45. 2 interceptions. Yeah, the Bills did a good job, and I
4 of
know there was
16 on third down.
Yeah.
4 of 16. That's
You can't-
crazy.
Yeah,
So
How do you
can't
get 31
poo-poo on
points
this.
from that? You know,
Yeah.
like you look at that, and where do you come up with 31
You
points?
get a
Field
defensive
position, field
touchdown.
position.
You get
There
a
it is.
50-yard punt. You get Xavier Howard running that interception back. You get the Javon Holland interception that set him up. Yeah, it's
But,
there you go.
but here, that's one thing with the Dolphins is like, I know Bills fans don't like to hear it, but like Xavier Howard's an absolute stud. Javon Holland is going to be a special football player. Christian Wilkins is he's unique, man. He might grab a couple balls from here and there, but he's really freaking good. Like
they have a lot of talent, no doubt.
Building pieces. But if they don't have the quarterback, just like the Jets, if you don't have the quarterback, you're not going to be able to compete with a team like the Bills that has the quarterback.
Very fair point. And I thought, that again, we're sitting here saying it with Miami putting up 31, really 24 on offense, but they had a game plan that they stuck to throughout. And when they needed to lean into it and make plays, they leaned into it and make plays. The only drive that I was really disappointed with the Bills defense was the one that gave Miami 31 points when it was 34-24 and Miami Bills kicked off and Miami drove down maybe a 5-6 minute drive, the one that ended with the Wilson touchdown.
Yeah.
That was really the only drive where I was like, man, other than that, again, I thought they were put in some unfortunate positions because of what was going on in the offense or what happened with special teams at times. And they were able to answer that bell.
Yeah. And the thing, coming into this game, everyone knew what the game plan needed to be, starting with stopping the run, right? With the way that McDaniel can scheme up a run game. I know Mostert was hurt, but Jeff Wilson's a capable running back. Obviously, Ahmed is obviously a real actually kind of squirts in and out of holes, and he actually played pretty well against the Bills the last go round. I think stopping that run was huge. I mean, they let's see, what was the final rushing yardage for them? I think they only had 20 rushes.
I would say I know Wilson had
42.
10, and Wilson was 10
42.
For
42. 20 rushes for 42 yards. That is a win. So that right there made Thompson, it made that offense one-dimensional, right? So now that's why you got those 45 attempts from Thompson and some of those plays we were talking about, throwing it into the dirt, creating interceptions, not taking those easy first downs. We talk about this, if there's a kryptonite on this defense over the years, it's been, first of all, mobile quarterbacks, guys that want to take off. The Bills paid no attention to him as a quarterback that could run. And as we talked about, I think he could have. And then those third and longs this year have been worrisome, and they did complete one to Waddle on that play. I think that is still worrisome to an extent, but this is the game plan. Frazier came in, said, you're not going to run the ball on us. I mean, they had 7 tackles for loss, some pretty big hits. They shut down some of their trick plays, and so it made Thompson have to pass it. It made him have to pass it, and they couldn't do it consistently.
Yeah, they made Tyler Skylar Thompson. They made him have to beat you, put the ball in his hands and see what he can do. So, we've given credit to Frazier and the design for what they did with the simulateds, what they did with the creepers, what they did with their blitzes. Kev, what are your thoughts on the Bills' just regular 4-man rush, that defensive line unit, especially missing Von Miller? So you're looking at Gregory Rousseau and Oliver and Jones and Settle and Basham and Shaq and AJ and Eli Anku today. Again, this also ties into Y-Town's King. Thank you very much for being here, and the super chat donation as well. Because he had questions about the Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham rotation, saying that Boogie was in there far too long at points and he was losing contain and falling on his moves. So whether you're focusing on that or you're just looking at this defensive line as a whole, what are your thoughts on the 4-man front? Because, maybe the Bills don't bring as many simulateds or blitzes or creepers if they feel like the front four is going to take care of it. We weren't seeing this much gamesmanship from Frazier early on when you had Von Miller and that front four was cooking. How do you think they did just as a group? Do you think it's at all any worrisome? Is there any potential there to worry given that they didn't just generate pressure with a regular front four.
Yeah, I was a little worried, and that was, we talked about how we should we done better against a third string quarterback? Should we have done better here and there? But the DBs, how did they look? But I think the defensive line is a good point. Like, I would have liked some more pressures and some more without the simulated pressures from the 4-man front, because we talked about it. You're playing a right guard at right tackle for the first time.
Yeah,
you're playing a practice squad guard. I did expect some more pressure just from standard rushes, just from standard without the simulated. I would have liked to see a little bit more. I did see Boogie in there. I didn't watch it back yet, so I wasn't sure if my eyes were right, but I did feel like he was in there a lot. I do feel like he struggled at times, and then, he gets through at times. Yeah. So he's an interesting player and has been, and will continue to probably be, like, how this development goes for him. And, I have to watch it back, but I would have liked to see some more from the defensive line. I am a little worried as you get to primetime quarterbacks now, whether it is Trevor Lawrence or Uber says it's going to be Burrow. So as that happens, we need to get there. Like, we're going to not be as able to win with simulated pressures, and we might have to, but maybe it'll still work. But I'd like to see that front four get a little bit more pressure with AJ Epinesa. Will we see Phelps back next week? A couple of things there. All in all, I'll be honest, that is probably one of the more worrisome parts that I took away from today that I would like to see a little bit more of, especially against, we talked about the quarterback, especially against a fifth tackle and a backup practice squad guard.
Yeah, very fair. Uber, I would say, I see you've been very demonstrative, nodding along with Kevin and then shaking your head at the end. Are you vibing along the same lines as Kev when it comes to just, looking at the straight up front four?
Yeah, I found myself at points today just saying, like, how are we not getting pressure on him? And then, like, the stats would come up on the screen, and they'd be like, on 50% of the snaps, the Bills are getting pressure on Skyler. I was like, I don't know where that's coming from. Like, I didn't see it from watching it. And again, I think all of us right now have watched this game one time. We have not watched it a second time. Maybe you two have, or for what I know, but, like, I have only watched it once, and, like, found myself looking at it saying, the pressure's not good enough against a team that has 3 backup offensive linemen. Like, this got to be better. And you go back, you rewind to last year, right, in the playoffs, and our whole thing was like, we didn't get enough pressure on Patrick Mahomes. That's why we lost. We didn't pressure him. We didn't take him down. And then I look at this game where you're like, you're playing 3 backup offensive linemen. You're playing Skylar Thompson. You got to get more pressure than that. And it was frustrating. We won the game. We got through. But now we're going to play Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence in the next game. And if we win that game, we're probably going to play Patrick Mahomes. Like, we need more.
They got to step up. They do got to step it up. Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
I was happy with how they fit the run today with the front four. You saw a lot of good run defense snaps. And again, anytime you have 20 carries for like 40 something yards, those run fits start with the front four. Yeah. And I thought they were solid in that regard. I'm in a similar boat. I would have liked to see them be able to take advantage of a depleted offensive line and just win with 4. And there were some flashes. Rousseau had a couple nice reps. Oliver got in there a couple times. Epinesa had 1 or 2 good rushes, but it's not that consistency that, awesome. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Diggs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the super chat. And he says, fins down, just win, baby. It is good to have an offense that scores no matter what. Still many options for 3 more wins. Thank you, Cover One, and go Bills. No, thank you. Appreciate you for being here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the super chat. Yeah, Eric, I'm similar along the lines, here with Uber and Kev. In a perfect world, an ideal world, you don't have to cook up simulateds and creepers. You can sprinkle them in here or there, or you can sprinkle in blitzes, even if the game plan is this guy struggles against blitzes, go after him. But it felt like the Bills needed that today to be able to generate pressure instead of being able to just let their front four eat and go after it and play coverage behind it. Does that concern you at all going forward, knowing that this might have to be the world that they live in order to generate pressure?
It's so funny. It ties into what we were talking about earlier. So in my notes, I write pass rush worrisome. Thompson had time to push a ball down the field. Thompson's a guy that typically holds on to the ball for 2.99 seconds. He probably had a lot more. Which is long.
For those who don't know, that's long.
Some of the worst. Yeah. And so he had a lot of time to push the ball down the field on those big plays. Again, some they completed, some they didn't. But right afterwards, and I have a marker, this was in the third quarter at the 5:14 mark. My next 2 notes, Edmonds on the doorstep as a pass rusher, and then another pressure off a creeper. That exactly, it plays to Anthony's point and everyone's point here is it was worrisome. But I also think that it's nice to have those pressures, simulated and creeper pressures as an option, to have linebackers that can do that. Because as you guys are talking about, they're going to have some decent offensive lines, but more importantly, they're going to have some quarterbacks they're going to face that know where to go with the ball and get it out quick. So you're not going to want to run a lot of those blitzes, those 5 or 6 man blitzes, on these quarterbacks that we're going to see. You're going to have to mix up the different types of pressures, but really try not to sacrifice on the back end. So we're lucky enough as Bill fans to have guys like Milano and Edmonds that can create pressure in their own ways and get quarterbacks off the spot. But we're also in many ways, I know Von's out, but to have defensive ends that can at least get into the hook to curl area and just drop out, right? And that's probably why Basham was in there as well, because he has that athleticism to drop out. And as Kev said, there were times he was turning that corner and making plays. But I'd say from a front four perspective, from when they only wanted to rush 4, the guy that stood out wasn't Ed Oliver, although Oliver, when he got his sack, it was because Tremaine Edmonds was blitzing.
Correct. And pulled the guard away.
Blitzing, that guard squeezed on him as the most dangerous threat coming full speed. And Oliver, he finished the play. That's great. But yeah, everything's coming back into the linebackers and Edmonds. But I will say that I think, and Matty Mo.
We get it, Uber. You like Matt Milano.
I fucking love him. I love him so much.
I do think the guy that really didn't get much love in this game, maybe he will in the box score when we're talking pressures, Daquan Jones, man. Daquan Jones up the middle was pushing the pocket and occupying a lot of times. And so maybe he didn't get, again, the sacks or whatever, that glory stats. But I think that when the stats come out and when the film comes out, you're going to see that he did have an effect on that quarterback up the middle.
He also had, he and Shaq on that one reverse to Tyreek Hill, they both sniffed it out and made him widen and loop hard and cause that 5-yard loss. I just always at this point, like, I expect it as a theme. Like, once I go and watch the tape, I'm gonna be like, oh, Daquan Jones had a really good game this game. Like, he just has been a really strong player for this team and having a really good year one for this team. And I look to see what he does going forward. Again, they played well against the run, which was tremendously important. Like Eric said, and like we talked about leading into this matchup, you had to do anything you could to put it onto Skylar Thompson. And the easiest thing for him would have been if he could just snap it and hand off and snap it and hand off. The Bills did not allow that to happen. But yeah, it would have been nice to also see productivity from their straight 4-man rush, especially against an offense that has weapons like the Dolphins. Even if the trigger man is Skylar Thompson, you still want to have those numbers in coverage against Jalen Waddle, even though he's banged up, and against Tyreek Hill. And to all of our points, that should only increase going forward. Even if you're playing Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or Tyler Huntley or maybe Anthony Brown, whoever's going in for the Ravens, like if you don't have to commit more numbers to the rush, you don't want to. And it seemed like it was a bit of a necessity in today's game. But nonetheless, as we start to wind down, I'll say this is a really good thing from Greg Tummins here. He says 34 points. I guess 55 would have been nice. Yeah, that's fair. Like at the end of the day, the Bills put up 34 points. And at times when they put up 34 points, turning the ball over multiple times and having some questionable decision-making, having drops, like losing explosive plays, like that was it. At times they were their own worst enemy. And so I think if you're looking at everything in conjunction in the totality of this game, first of all, as many people said to lead off this episode, survive and advance. That's what the playoffs is. Win and live to fight another day. The Bills did that. We'll see who they play. It is a tournament. That's it. You're one and done. Get the win. Who cares how you got it? Move forward. When you're going to care how you got it is on Monday and Tuesday when you're breaking down the game and figuring out how you can fix the things that went wrong. And that's the perspective, right? There are some things that were less than ideal on both sides of the ball, but Bills had the opportunity to clean them up because they won a day and because they move forward and advance in this, win or go home, live or die tournament that is the NFL playoffs. The Bills win, and we're excited, and we're happy, and we're also now big dubs. We're going to start to wind down, say goodbye here, send everybody on their way to the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals, even though, for all intents and purposes,
you don't even have to watch it.
I was going to say you don't have to play the game because Bengals are winning, so it's over. We'll
3-0 early on.
Yeah, it's over then, right? Isn't that what someone said?
It's done. Yeah. According to Bengals fans, when it was 7-3, that game was done. So whoever's up first,
they won. Move them on.
Mark says it right there. Bengals up 3-0. Guess that game is over. We wanted to add this, bonus post game to the network and the channel today, just because of the nature of how this game went, it being the playoffs and everything. So we recognize it was a spur of the moment, not planned for really, us here leading into the week, the four of us here, or to everybody who joined us in this episode. So for everyone who joined us live here on this episode, thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us and riding with us and taking the time to consume the content we produce. If you're watching later or listening later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your post-live view, listen, download, whatever you have in any way, shape, or form. We greatly appreciate it. While you are here, please subscribe to the Cover One Film Room. Subscribe to the Cover One Network as a whole. We have content for you literally every single day of the week on the YouTube channel and the podcasting apps and platforms. We have coverage. We have content for you on the Cover One website, articles ranging everything from matchups to game breakdowns to prop bets. We have you covered in a variety of fashions for anything and everything when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. So check out all that content, rate, review, subscribe, all of those fun things. Eric, any parting words or parting things to send the people on their way before we vamonos out of here?
No, I think you covered it all. As everyone said, a win's a win. I don't really care, especially when you talk about playing a team for the third time in a season, especially when you play a team that has a defensive scheme that actually gives the offensive scheme that Josh Allen and the Bills run issues. So a win's a win. It was definitely a doozy. It was a long game. It was drawn out. I mean, if my wife was stressed out watching it, and she doesn't really get all that stressed and barely pays attention most of the time, but she was like, I can't do this the whole playoffs. I'm like, well, hopefully you won't have to, but get ready for it because it's going to be that type of battle week in and week out. But in the end, the Bills pulled it out against the Dolphins, and that's all I want. And now we just wait. We just wait for the film. And as Anthony said, we'll examine the film, see the good, the bad, and what they need to improve on for next week.
We'll see who we should get an announcement tonight on when the Bills play next week. Obviously, we'll know who they play once Bengals Ravens is done. Again, that game doesn't matter because the Bengals are going to win, so it is what it is. We'll see. Yeah, there you go. We'll find out. We'll find out when the Bills play the Bengals at some point tonight, potentially next week. And dive into the tape, the advanced metrics, all of those pieces. We'll see here in the Cover One Film Room live Tuesday night at 9 p.m. for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. So thank you folks for tuning into this kind of spur of the moment, non-film based episode of the Film Room. Thank you very much to Uber. Thank you very much to Mr. Kevin Masseri for joining us tonight and making this 4-man film room piece. Again, more dots film than regular human body film. Yeah. A little bit of a freestyle episode of this. So thank you too for joining us. Uber's connecting all the dots right there with his fingers. He's having a good time. We hope all you folks who joined us had a good time as well. Thank you very much for being here. While you're still here, or if you're watching later, please drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears for Kevin, for Uber, for Eric Turner, for myself, Anthony Prohaska. This has been another episode of the Cover One Film Room. We want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. We will see you next week. Godspeed and go Bills.